We know you did.
Want to ask Bob?
Want me to open it? Supposed to do the Pledge of Allegiance, I mean,
You guys are on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as I was saying, it depends, and the reason it depends on each decision. Each one of these decisions is just a little bit different. So I looked at 4 comprehensive permits that have been issued. One for Stonegate Landing on Somerset Avenue, one for Dighton Homes Joint Venture off of Buck Plain Road, one for Stone Ridge Estates off of Pine Street, and the other for PMJD Realty off of another project on Pine Street. So, the one issued in 2009 from Stonegate Landing off of Somerset Avenue actually contemplates that the roads will be accepted by the town. Paragraph 59 says, the applicant shall seek to have the town accept the roadways in accordance with the methods and technical requirements of the rules and regulations of the Dighton Planning Board. Okay, so that's that one. And I'm gonna tell you what that means in a minute, but that's that one.
Okay.
In the one for the Dighton Homes Joint Venture, Dighton Woods, it provides that the applicant's gonna be responsible for maintenance of the stormwater, utilities and roadways, trash pickup, etc., until the earlier of such time as the town has accepted the roadways, or 2 years after the completion of the project. And then there's a whole issue about who takes care of what, if the town hasn't accepted. So you would need a modification. It anticipates that the town would consider accepting the roadways.
and this is
And
which one?
What condition is that?
That was condition number 16. It's interesting, so just so you know, in a couple of these decisions, there's a very standard infrastructure paragraph condition that almost all 40B decisions include, where it says that certain things shall forever remain private. And then it lists stormwater management, street lighting, driveway and parking areas, landscaping, recreation, common areas, emergency access roads, sanitary sewer system. This then is followed by a paragraph that says the town may accept the roads. So they can move to do that. Stony Ridge Estates on Pine Street provides, it actually has a lot of criteria about how to construct the road. And then it says that in paragraph 21, the developer and or homeowners association shall have the responsibility of the following until the roads have been accepted by the town. So it also contemplates that potentially the roads can be accepted by the town. And then it says the roadways shall not, I mean, I'm just taking a piece out of it, so there's details, but for instance, this says the roadways shall not be presented to the town for acceptance until final build-out is defined in another condition, and it talks about that.
Is there anything in there that indicates that the other parts of that, like the rubbish removal, the school bus and other things like that, because some of these weren't even accepted because the school buses were going to be going into them.
Well, that's, the school buses you can't control. The school buses are a practice of the school department and where they go. That's not something that the zoning board or the planning board, or quite frankly, even the board of selectmen
But
can control.
wasn't that written into those?
Well, I didn't look for the school bus.
What I'm looking for is there
item.
any money that's appropriated in there? Because as part of the homeowners association was
So-
fees for the rubbish removal,
No,
stormwater
right,
management, cleaning the detention ponds.
I looked at this about roadways, okay? So
Okay.
in this one, as I said, I'm only talking about roadways. There are other requirements that go into this, but in this one, to your point, it says that acceptance of any and all components of the stormwater management system located in the roadways, the homeowners shall be required to provide the town with full indemnification of any and all liability, responsibility and expenses, including but not limited to attorney's fees incurred by the town associated with any failure of the stormwater management system, as required by these conditions, of the variance allowing the construction of an above-ground infiltration system.
So if
there
we
was some
accept it,
variance
that would
there.
negate that. If we accept the responsibilities, that would negate that.
It depends, so this is not black and white, okay? And let me just go through the last one and we'll talk about
Okay.
the process for a minute. So my first glance over this was, would somebody have to amend a decision in order to have the roadways accepted, okay? And so far, not the last one, but so far, the answer is no. Nobody would have to amend the decision
Okay.
in order for the roadways to be accepted.
Okay.
They would have to go through a process, but they would not have to amend the decision.
Okay.
And so before we get into the
Yep.
details of that, the last one is, the other one on Pine Street by PMJD Realty. And so this decision was modified, but the underlying decision, which was not changed, has the language relative to the applicant has proposed and the board requires the following portions of the project be and shall ever remain private, okay? And it goes to that same list that I read in the other one: stormwater, street lighting, all driveways and parking areas, landscaping, recreational common areas, sewer, water, wastewater, roadways, and trash pickup. This one does not contemplate that the town would accept it. In my brief review, because I just reviewed this one right before I came in, because I didn't have this one. In my brief review of this, it does not appear to have the same language as the other ones that anticipate there might be an application for acceptance. So in this one, I believe you would have to go back and modify the comprehensive permit with regards to that if you were gonna have the roadways accepted.
Okay, and that
Okay.
makes sense. The discussions I had with the developer, obviously, he's read that verbatim, and he
Right.
knows that there's no language in there.
Right. So let's talk about the ones where you possibly could accept the roadways. So first of all,
One
yep,
question, are these the final decisions that you have there? Because our attorney,
If she's been given all the final decisions.
okay,
yeah. So, so let's talk about the ones that contemplate a possibility, not a requirement, but a possibility. So just like in any other roadway acceptance, you have a right, A, to say no. So the overall process is, somebody wants a roadway accepted, they go to the planning board and they say, does this meet your standards? Would you be willing to do it? The planning board can say, I need an as-built, I need to see how the construction was done, where's the stormwater, blah, blah, blah. And they can say no, or they can say, sure, we'll accept it, but we would recommend an acceptance, but you have to do all of these things. And then that moves over to the Board of Selectmen. And then the Board of Selectmen get to say, they have to hold a layout hearing. And they hold a layout hearing, and they say, yeah, we're willing to lay this out, boom, and we'll send it off to town meeting. Or, we won't lay this out unless you do all the things that the planning board said you need to do, okay? And then, it goes to town meeting to decide if the Board of Selectmen decide to send it to town meeting.
Okay,
the final decision would still remain with the town meeting.
the town's.
Always.
Yes.
Okay.
So it never
Always.
go,
Past practices for the planning board in accepting our subdivision roads, we hold the hearing. We actually send the recommendation down, the selectmen agree with us, we hold the public hearing, I do the warrant, get the deed.
You hold the layout hearing, the actual layout hearing?
I believe no.
Maybe you
even know.
do, but.
I don't even know if we've ever held a layout hearing. I know that we hold a public hearing.
Right.
We advertise.
It's never been quantified as a layout hearing.
Okay, well,
Correct.
that's what technically it's
Right,
called, is a
right,
layout
right.
hearing, right? So you're
Right.
deciding, is this acceptable to lay out as a
Right.
town road or not?
Right.
The final acceptance of any road is left up to town meeting.
Right,
Now, quite frankly, any of these people can petition the
right,
town meeting
Right.
as a citizen's petition.
Right.
And then, then everybody gets to stand up and hoot and
Right.
holler and say, no way.
right,
So, in that negotiation, or in that acceptance process, the planning board's gonna look and say, well, what was required of you to do on this roadway? What is the condition of your stormwater facilities?
right,
Is it something that we wanna accept? Is it not something we wanna accept? Do we want you to put a bond in? Do we want you to make improvements to it before we accept it?
right.
That's up to them. There's nothing in these decisions that I've seen so far that says they would just have to do it
Right,
at all.
right. But I think in our last discussions, Peter Williams stated that all the 40B subdivisions have used the planning board criteria for road construction.
Okay, well, he would know that
So,
because
right.
I
Right,
didn't sit in on these.
right.
Peter would know because he
Right.
did the peer review.
And he said there was even bonds that were put up for septics and things of that nature, so.
And some of these talk about
Right,
those
right.
indemnifications, right?
Now, I think the point needs to be made, and I'll just jump in for a second, because I know Bob has this concern. The homeowners association does not go away,
No,
because.
because there are other things the
Right.
homeowners
They do
association
not
has
go
to do.
away. Right.
They have to continue to pay for the lights, they have to continue to pay for
My
the open
only
space.
issue with that homeowners association is if there was something in there that we provided $100 a month for every person that works there. It's a 40 unit subdivision,
Yeah.
that's, that's $4,000 a month
Yeah.
times 12 months, is $48,000 a year. A certain portion of that would have been set aside for snow removal or pothole filling or whatever that amount of money would either be delegated back to the highway department as a form of a piece of equipment, or to the library.
Well, you
It's-
mean,
they're
that's
on the hook for
negotiation,
it.
you can't, no. If the town decides to accept a roadway.
The first three you just talked about, I agree with you. It already says that it's in there and the town has the right to accept it if they
Right.
want. But the last one requires.
Well, that's a
40.
negotiation for you to have
Right.
with the developer, because they have to get a modification, okay?
Right,
But
okay.
let me just say to you, okay, that it doesn't jive, right? So the homeowners association, these people are putting money in to take care of what they have in front of them, okay? I can assure you, it's not $100 a month, likely. It's-
200 a year.
Yeah, it's likely more
Right.
like that.
Right,
And so you can negotiate as part of that, that comprehensive permit, that modification, getting anything out of them that you can, or legally can. But otherwise, the planning board has the authority to say, and you can come testify at the hearing, that, look, these stormwater facilities haven't been maintained. The curbing is all torn up in the
But the
roadways.
planning board doesn't permit these.
No, hold on. They're the ones that recommend the acceptance or not.
Oh, okay.
right.
And so when they're making the acceptance, they send Peter out, who has looked at all this stuff. They send Peter out, they say to the developer, give me an as-built plan.
Right.
Peter looks at the as-built plan, he takes it out there and he says, no, half of this California curbing has been torn up. I don't recommend the planning board accept this until it's been replaced. The stormwater system hasn't been cleaned out since the first time you did construction.
Right.
I don't recommend this, and so all that work has to be done, and so the homeowners associations have to pay to have that work done before the road's in a condition that the planning board would accept it.
Right. Right.
So they have to make it of a condition that the planning board would recommend acceptance of it.
Right.
It's different for the Pines though.
The Pines has to come back to you and have a conversation with you. They have to file for modification to their to their comprehensive permit.
And that's gonna be the first one.
That'll be
And-
fine.
Of course it is. It's
and
one-
can we-
I don't have a problem with having an open meeting and changing the wording on this and stuff. But going forward, right, because we're here because of what happened last winter, right? With the
There's a few reasons,
other
but yes, that's the
subdivisions,
biggest one.
your subdivisions as well. Some of
Right.
them weren't being
Right.
plowed up properly, taken
Right.
care of.
Right.
So we thought, or we gave it thought, so that we could come up with something in the interim for this year here coming forward, because this man needs to know what he's responsible for throughout the year.
Right.
If a developer, whether it be Form A or comprehensive permit, on October 1st, they have to have the names and phone numbers of the people responsible for the snow removal, so we can get this one straightened out. Because this one's complete, am I right? And then,
Well,
Yeah, but
It's
the
not.
developer is responsible to the
Already.
road is accepted
Right.
by the
Right.
town.
right,
We
he's
can-
responsible, but he needs to have the person who's responsible for that snow removal, so that he's not getting the calls, he's not getting the calls, and if they
Well-
don't have the plan, no more building permits.
The problem is, Bob, and I don't wanna rehash this, we did it for 2 meetings already, is we're responsible indirectly for making sure Joe taxpayer is taken care of.
Yes, I
And that's
understand
not
that.
being done.
Mhm.
So, I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel, and it's obviously now that in 3 out of the 4, there was some intent to do what,
To
I
accept
said,
the road.
Allow it,
Right.
allow it, not an intent,
Right.
but an allowance of it, right.
So the question is, if we wanna move in that direction, we have to move forward with the Pines first and foremost to
I
get that
agree, Jim,
hearing.
but this isn't gonna solve the problem of what's gonna happen this winter, because these other projects are
can't
not, because they're not complete.
We discussed that
Well,
2
we
meetings
did,
ago.
we
when
did,
Yeah.
So
and
it's
we
gonna
have
go
a
ahead any
policy in
4
place
inch-
now,
Right.
Yeah,
and
there was
if
a
he
plan.
drives by
Oh,
and
maybe
there's
I
4
wasn't at the
inches,
last meeting, I
he's
didn't know.
plowing.
2 meetings ago,
No,
the
no,
first
you-
one we had.
You were, but there is a mechanism in place to do that automatic so that it's done, and they get back charged.
4, right?
Right, and they get back charged.
Right in.
Well, was this I didn't
It
see
was
this.
at the first meeting, we had that
Yeah.
first meeting,
Yeah.
right.
We did.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's a moot point, and we used that last year a couple of times and it worked towards the end of the season. But I think the matter at hand is, and I appreciate your effort, is the zoning board, I think, in my opinion, has gotta pick up the ball and run with this thing on the Pines.
Right.
Well, they have to be, the developer needs to petition
Yeah,
them.
right,
We
right.
can't
And I've
petition
already,
Right.
and I've already talked to him.
Right, so
And
he
he
needs to
wants
file a
it.
modification to his
Right, and
comp
he
plan.
wants-
And we
he
determine
wants the
whether
road
it's a
turned.
substantial
You know,
change
and I
or not.
suspect, and I was
I think it
surprised when I
is.
read these, because I have to tell you, most of the 40B comprehensive permit decisions I draft do not allow for the roadways to be accepted, but that's because the applicants are requesting waivers on the construction.
Right.
And if what you're telling me is that they all, Peter said they
Yeah.
constructed these to town rules,
Yeah.
it was contemplated during the process, the developer, I'm sure, said, okay, look, if we're gonna build these to town specifications, then you sure
You
as
can
heck
have it.
better
Right.
accept them
I thought some of them
afterwards.
were, they weren't, 26 feet is what the Form A lot is, right? 26 feet,
No.
7 feet
Form
in each.
A lot, no, a roadway.
7 feet on each side.
Depending on the road, we have different, there
Yeah.
are different, they
Yeah.
go from, 24 feet of pavement, 24-foot right of way, 20 feet pavement.
Right.
20.
But you started out with 40 feet.
Not
At
in
the-
every
no,
instance.
No.
At the opening, when you
Yeah.
go into it, you have to have
Right.
40-foot
Right.
right of way to enter the
These
subdivision.
roads are built out, I mean, they're good roads. Tom
Okay.
had concerns about across the street.
Yeah, but I
across
don't even
the-
think we're,
No, I don't even know what the fate of that one
and
is.
as far
but-
as, Bishop was in the other day,
Yeah.
and he actually is thinking about just buying that from Federoff, and that would probably be what's best for.
Yeah, I know, but Federoff needs to come back down to earth with his price, so.
Yeah, well,
But whatever.
Well, that's-
Great.
That's a little off
So,
subject.
right,
so
so-
it's just-
So, with that said, I talked to Bishop is interested in coming back and, doing exactly what we've intended, so I would just ask that the board tries to follow through with that, and we'll work together.
Well, he's gonna,
with
like
him.
you said, he's gonna
Yeah.
file a
He's gonna make an
petition.
application
We
for
can't file it for him.
modification, right.
Right, and,
It should be pretty simple, in
Now-
that one.
yeah,
I'd like
but we
to-
would get, Peter
Yeah.
Williams involved in
Yeah.
it, make
Oh,
sure
yeah.
the road and everything
Yeah.
else. We may ask them the same question that the planning
That's
board would
exactly right.
eventually
Right.
ask again.
Right,
It'll be probably a substantial change.
Yeah.
and Peter
We make
has
that
been
dis-
out to all these
we
subdivisions.
Yeah, I
make
think
that
we
determination.
qualify
He
for
does.
Staying on top
substantial
of the
change.
stormwater and all that,
the only one,
so-
like I said, he wasn't involved with, I believe, was Stonegate.
Right,
So
Yeah,
in going
Peter Williams
forward,
was not involved.
any more 40Bs that we do from the zoning board, we're going to go with the assumption that it's just going to be accepted by the town and not, and not.
But in exchange for that, they have to build it out to town
Right.
standards.
right.
Right,
Right.
Yeah.
right, I agree with you
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not gonna give up waivers on this. The
Right.
roads are gonna be built to the town, we're not gonna hear,
well,
'cause
that's a
they,
big relief from them to be able to say that you will accept them.
It's a
I mean,
relief for the homeowners,
It's a big
too.
deal, right.
It's a
It's a really big deal.
Yeah.
Because they're paying, as noted the last two meetings, they're paying taxes as
Right.
well as this homeowners
Yeah,
association.
there's no discount.
but they
And
also
that's-
get to
that-
build 4 lots to an acre,
The
and one of
whole-
those
That's
lots
the-
doesn't pay with
that's
the
right.
other tax.
I'd like
That's
to,
the
I'd like to
comprehensive
hear
It has
from,
everything to do with it.
I'd like to hear from the gentleman who's gonna have to take care of them. Please.
I'm sorry to put you through this.
I'm fine with it.
You dove right into it, a lot of information, you did a lot of work. I just want to be clear on what the question you were answering is.
Whether or not the comprehensive permits contemplated or allowed for the roads to be accepted, the decisions. Did the decisions allow for the roads to be accepted?
3 out of 4.
And that's to protect our residents in the future.
Well, it's,
So on the homeowner, if the homeowners association was going to assume responsibility.
right, right. So we're not talking about accepting any of the common areas, any of the retention
No,
ponds, none of that stuff.
That's all say under,
I don't like that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi, Selectmen, how are you?
We're late.
That's
Sorry.
okay,
You know, very
that's okay.
It's his fault.
important meeting.
We were comments.
It's actually been very productive, Lisa has given us
Oh,
some
okay,
great
so
news.
we weren't here.
It was productive.
No,
Okay, let's get back to the point.
no,
We're not gonna repeat everything now, are we?
no,
Make it through the tape.
no.
Wasn't a very good party.
No refreshments. No food. No food.
Okay, we're on TV.
thank you, Rachel.
So do you wanna recap?
Would you mind just making a brief
So,
statement
I'll
to the
just-
Selectmen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't go back over the whole thing.
I'll just do a recap. So I reviewed the existing comprehensive permits to answer the question whether or not they allowed for acceptance of the roads, or would by the town, or would the applicants or developers be required to go back to the zoning board to modify the comprehensive permits. And what I found was good news, sounds like for everybody, is that 3 of the 4 comprehensive permit projects contemplated that the town might accept the roads if it went through the process and the town determined it to be that way. And it's my understanding from the history we learned is that is because the town required them to build the roadways to town standards. The only one that didn't contemplate that is the Pines, is that what it's called, right?
Yes.
Pines.
Which is the first one that we
And
finished.
that one says all of that shall remain private, and so therefore they will have to do a modification to the zoning board to request a modification to allow the roads to be accepted.
Now, on the
That's the sum
Pines,
of it.
we gave them no relief on the width of the road, of the binder.
So I don't know, because I
No,
wasn't
know,
through
I
the.
remember this, the
Okay.
binder of the road,
So-
nothing at all met the requirements of the
Right.
fire
Yep.
trucks,
Right.
requirements of Tom.
Right,
So then it should be okay.
Yes,
so the process
It was
for the
foresight,
Pines
yeah.
will be to have the developer, which I've already spoke with, petition the zoning board to
Right.
modify the permit.
Yeah.
Once that's done and the project closes out, provided it's all approved, the process, as I understand it, is that the planning board needs to hold a layout hearing
Well,
or meeting.
the planning board needs to review and see whether or not it's
Okay.
appropriate for the town to accept it, whether or not the
Okay.
condition of the road
Yeah.
meets the town standards,
Even
all of
if it's,
that.
even if it's their project?
even-
They're all originally their projects.
yeah.
Right, but the planning board always starts to make recommendations relative to road layout,
Acceptance
always.
of road
Yeah.
layouts, right.
And so the planning board will review it, make sure it meets all those
Right.
requirements, and then refer it off to the board of selectmen to go off to town meeting.
We've already granted the permit, Tom, they have to.
Yeah.
Right.
So it seems like it's a pretty
the point-
forthright process.
What were the other three projects that were okay?
Um,
Stony
The
Ridge,
Stone-
Stone Gate, and Dyton Woods.
No, Stony Ridge, Dayton Woods, and Stonegate?
And,
Oh, it
yeah,
did-
Stone
it
Gate.
wasn't
It's
in
in,
there?
Stone
it's not
Gate.
accepted.
Yeah, we
It's
have,
in
Nope.
there.
let's
Stone
accept it,
Gate.
and you're
Yeah,
gonna
we
regroup, I'm
accept
just
it. You gotta
saying.
regroup
the
on
three-
that.
Dyton
Yeah.
Woods
20
and
feet.
Stony Ridge.
It has the
When we
language to
accept
accept
it, that
it.
means that
Yeah.
it meets our standard.
It wasn't
That's
even
right.
like a
Right.
final thing.
Except for
But
Stone.
Peter Williams has to go back out.
We
and
can talk
It
about
find
doesn't
out.
meet
because
the
one of the other
standards, they
issues
don't
was
have to
we
accept
wanna
it.
tax the developer for all the property, including the roads, until we accept
Well, you should be doing that right now.
it. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, we
that's,
know
she,
that.
she told us that we
I know,
last
I
time,
Yeah.
couldn't
yeah.
remember, but I know we
Yeah.
got it.
And I-
Carol's gonna do
The
it.
planning board
That's-
did get,
Well, planning done, okay.
That's
we did
strictly
get a letter
Carol-
from the
strictly a
assessor's
Carol,
office.
Yep.
issue, right.
What's the status of Richmond Hill?
It's all done, isn't it?
I believe, I know they had some fence things they had to do.
But are the roads gonna be presented at town meeting for acceptance?
I have got no paperwork, I've asked for it numerous times.
Are the
So-
roads,
Annual town
are they up to standard?
I believe that he has completed.
I figure out why, but we're okay.
Officially done?
I think so. He's not returning my call, so I feel we're on my welcome.
Around the detention basin was not up yet. That was the last I heard. As far as the
It's
planning board, I
cheapest-
believe,
Cheapest one.
right? I believe they have met all of our needs. I believe the only need was, the Board of Health wanted the signs around the detention basins and they had not been up yet.
So the paperwork they have to file now to get those roads on a town meeting warrant
Mhm.
is what you're waiting for?
Yep, I need an as-built.
Does it go on special
a
town
deed.
meeting or is it annual town?
You can do either one.
Either
Okay,
one.
perfect.
I need a deed, I need their meets and bounds, I need, we have a checklist that all departments need to sign
certification.
off on.
And they
And we
know
hold a
this?
public hearing. Yes. I will remind Steve again, I believe he'll probably be in next week.
Okay, good, good.
Yes, Tom?
If I could ask you to reiterate the layout hearing, are we good, is that something that we're skipping, or the process that the
Well,
planning board's using?
I need to, before I put my foot in my mouth, I need to find out what it is that you do. I recited the statutory requirements, so perhaps Dayton has a different process.
Okay.
We're going to evolve to make sure that we conform with that process.
As long as we're all in a room.
Yeah.
Generically
We got players
speaking,
there.
generically speaking, the planning board would hold a hearing to determine whether or not it's adequate. They would make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, who would hold a layout hearing, who would then make a recommendation to town meeting to have an acceptance,
Right.
generically speaking.
And that layout hearing, that's the time that the public has the chance to put input.
Yeah, and during the planning board process.
And,
So what is-
in their review,
What is the difference between the planning board's hearing and the layout hearing?
Because the roads
Not the
can't be
why, but
accepted as
no,
public,
just the difference.
well, because you're supposed to have done everything to make sure it's okay. As the, overseers of the town, they say add it to the tax rolls or not, essentially, right? And then, or the burden on the tax rolls or not, and then make the recommendation to town
So,
meeting.
so if we do our job correctly, then they're basically rubber stamps
They-
after
that-
their hearing.
That's right, that's
Okay.
right.
That's it, rubber stamp?
That's all we're.
Rubber stamps are important.
I don't feel very.
Nice try,
So
Tom.
when I have-
She said-
I like,
Sounded
when I
good.
put it in the newspaper, I
When
put
she
the-
said the
the-
use
Yeah.
of-
That's okay.
You're holding the layout here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I'm not supposed
Which
to
is-
be, or?
Well,
Well-
I just need to look and see what you guys have done.
Yeah.
I've never walked you guys through a layout hearing process, so
Right.
I don't understand what
No.
you do, so.
Okay.
I
So
think we
we'll
would
get
defer
on
to
that.
your expertise.
I
and-
Yeah,
just didn't want that
absolutely.
glazed over, and we didn't talk about it again, if it's
No.
something we should be doing.
No, thank you.
No, I agree with you, because I've
why we
only
invite-
done it the way that I was told to do it 15 years ago.
No, that's fine.
So,
And that's kind
If-
of why
if it
I
was in
initiated.
And it's
all
worked,
this
and it's fine, and
Yeah.
everybody's rocking and rolling, and if we
Yeah.
can make some tweaks to it, we'll do that.
That's right.
No,
So-
Going forward.
one question I do have, Lisa, because I've always been on the fence about this, is once it is accepted at town meeting, in order for us to get our chapter 90 money for that street,
Yeah.
does the town clerk need to file something with the state?
I don't know, because that's an administrative issue, so it needs to go on the rolls in the town clerk's office as an accepted road, and it needs to be listed with your public road. And every year, I don't know how often you update the Mass Highway list, but it should be added to it. So they ask for an inventory of your lists before they give you your chapter 90 funds, so that you can include any new linear feet on the list. And that should happen every year.
Okay.
And then that increases your chapter 90 funds because you increase your linear feet.
Do you get that list? Do you get that request, John?
That list you're talking about, I
Yeah.
think comes back from the state.
Right, and then you have to
Because
add
the
to it.
town clerk records it, and that's when it becomes law. Right.
Well, we record the deed, that you would record the deed and the plan,
Right.
and then it gets listed, but the state doesn't update that. You need to update that.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yes, it's not just the miles, it's the population also,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. It needs to be updated locally, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So there could be some left on the table, we don't know.
I think there is,
Right.
because when I look, when Tom and I talk about mileage in the town, we say we have a little bit more than what we're getting chapter 90 money for, that's,
Right.
so I could never,
Mhm.
Every
Put my
once in a while, we should
fingers-
make a practice of like every 5 or every 10 years of really going out and looking at it all.
Well, we're at a crossroad, obviously, which is
Yeah.
why we're doing this.
Right,
We're about to start
Yeah.
to steamroll here.
mhm.
The population's one of the bigger factors on that determination, on that
yeah.
figure that they've come up with.
Okay, so that's pretty positive, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It wasn't that we don't like to read those things, but it's just, you know.
Clearly,
I
none of us
live
did.
to read them.
That's what you get paid the big bucks for.
I have a question, is when the roads are going in and the utilities are going in, there is a certain distance between the gas line, the water line, trees
You
and
have
things like.
inspections, you have inspections during the
Right,
process.
who does those inspections?
Would be Peter, would be
Right, Peter
Peter
Williams.
during the process.
Peter Williams
Yeah.
will be done.
Peter does them.
Just like he does on your subdivisions.
Right.
Okay, therefore, I was talking to someone from the water department, and they were talking about seeing, I believe it was the gas line and the water line being less than 4 feet apart.
Well, so there's 2 levels of that. One, your
Which-
water department issues the permits to do that, and if that's the case, they should have said stop. And 2, Peter looks at it, so, I don't,
Each one has
you've
to
got,
go
a-
to
you've
different
got a
depths
bunch of
too,
different
right?
eyes out there.
That can be an issue, and that's the, if that is the case, and they also said there was trees put on the top of the water line.
Yeah, well, that's
That's-
something where we need to work collectively and issue stop work orders or get.
Yeah, you've got a lot of eyes out there, somebody
Right.
needs to raise their
But there
hand.
needs to be collaboration, when it's happening, we need to
Well, it
call the
wasn't,
commissioner,
I
call
think they
whoever.
were called in, to do something, and when they.
Well, this is after
went-
the fact.
After the
Yeah,
fact.
But
well-
no,
No, I
when
was,
the
I
ground's
was
Each one has
under
to
the
be at a
impression,
different
I was
depth too, don't they?
surprised, the
It
water
depends.
district
Yeah.
usually
Right,
stands there.
right.
Like I've heard developers
Right.
complain that they're paying this guy to stand here while they lay the pipe, you know, I mean, so.
I think it was more the gas company came in and laid their pipe, and there was no monitoring on that.
And I don't know if the water department's invited when the water system's being installed in the development either.
It's being
I know
tied in,
for-
it's
I know
being tied
for
into their
ours.
water.
They
and
tied in
water.
after installation, so.
I think, I know in ours that they are.
They've got, and their rules and regulations, they require oversight.
How many
Yeah.
feet of a trench you need to leave open on each end for the hookup? You allowed to backfill so much of it, correct?
Yeah.
25 feet.
Yeah. So we can't monitor if it went through a piece of property offset.
Well, Peter would know because
Yeah.
he's
Yeah,
he's
he
out there
would.
watching.
I think the gas and the water should be about 10 feet apart.
Well, you gotta make that in your regulations, so you
I
can't,
know, I
yeah.
think it is.
So if it's in the regulations, that's what they are
It's
supposed
just
to follow.
enforcement. You have to get the water department to,
And it's
you know.
supposed to be at a different height.
What
Well,
about
the-
sewer lines? Is that another distance?
Yeah,
Yes.
it has to be
Yeah.
below the water and away from.
Right, right,
It's usually much deeper.
which we only have one that I'm aware of,
Yeah,
Jennifer
this one
Lane.
right there.
Jennifer Lane. And this one, he's got
This
some.
one here, Sue?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, this one.
I mean,
Okay.
that can be a
Tiny
future
woods.
big issue.
Yeah.
If trees are being planted on the top of water line or a gas line and things like that.
Well, that's
that
where,
can be
that's
a
where
serious-
the
The as-bills,
as-bills
right.
come in, that's
Right.
when the as-bills
Right.
come in, and then.
And the zoning board
unless it-
requires
we have that
as-bills.
I know
power
when
to
we
be
did,
like, well, wait a
on
minute,
Pines,
But
how many
if-
trees, where the
right.
trees were
The paper-
Yeah,
located.
that's
We
in,
went out,
yeah,
said not enough trees or too many trees.
Right.
We
they
all-
put a
that's in
stamp
those,
on
that's
it.
in those decisions.
Yeah, we
They
have
put
that
it-
now.
So just so the selectmen are current, the homeowners associations on these are not going away. There's still gonna be common areas, there's still gonna be areas that the homeowners
Lighting.
have to take care of, lighting, drainage areas, things of that
The
nature. So
detention ponds have
we
to be
can't,
mowed
we
and
can't
stuff.
dissolve it completely, we don't want to.
But we'll
But the-
accept the roads.
The roads only, the roads will become town roads,
Yeah.
right? Which will be under the responsibility of Tommy, and we'll add to our chapter 90
What about
lots.
trash?
Trash is
we
already
have-
going
We have
in.
public pickup.
Going
have-
through these
yeah,
already?
we have
Okay,
public
so the
pickup,
dumpster deals at
Yeah.
the end of these things are
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, Borges has been really, really good. Once
Okay.
he's got a couple houses in there,
Good
he's
deal.
been going.
Yeah,
down with
and
it,
once
so-
he has a letter from the developer signing
Yeah,
off, it's
he's been fine.
no.
I know a couple of,
no
like the one we
harms
did that
agreement.
didn't happen, we had dumpster corrals,
Right.
things like that, you knew it was gonna be an issue.
I think from now on, as long as we stay with Borges, Borges has been very forthright,
Go
so
right
you
on.
can worry less about that when you're
Okay.
writing your permits.
So the issue with the gas lines and the water lines and the sewer lines, how are you gonna deal with that? So
We have to
you
get,
coordinate with the water department, how are we gonna do that? Something's gotta change.
Well, in
Yeah.
order for us to
Review.
accept the
Yeah.
street, we always, the planning board always requires an as-built, because, and then Peter reviews it, and Peter will inform us of any,
He
Okay.
does do site visits.
yeah.
and
Yeah,
he
he
does,
does.
he does, you know, he
So it's just
definitely
an
does.
enforcement with what Peter tells you.
That's right, then we would come back and say, you know, well, wait a minute, the water lines or something, we're not gonna accept this road unless you X, Y, and Z.
Right, okay.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
A pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We meet over there?
All right. Make a motion to, make a motion to
I'll
adjourn.
make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Either the petitioners.
I will. Thank you. Thank you.
Did you all-
I checked that.
If I need to-
Got stuff done.